It's Sunday the 24th of June 2018. A few people have asked me some questions about the gold development stories that I've been talking about, and just to do a bit of an update on them. So I thought I'd swing through a few charts to try and sort of explain my investments and sort of the perspective on the gold market, I guess. So the first one is West African Resources. WAF is the code. I've been in this for about a year now. Had a bit of a downtrend the last 4 to 6 months. Had a big capital raising at 33 cents a few weeks ago. The key event I've been waiting for a long time now is the feasibility study for their Sembrado project, which was going to be a huge improvement. Came out on Friday, that announcement. Very good numbers. In particular, the all-in cost for the first 5 years of production, $550 an ounce, which is world-class, probably in the top 10% of gold mines for that with those sort of costs. And of new projects, very, very good costs. Most of the new projects, even something like Gold Road, which is a huge scale deposit and has has that advantage of having the scale for the mill, etc. Is I think the cost there are about 700 US an ounce. So 550 is extremely low. 640 an ounce for the life of mines. Obviously the project resources tend to drop away a little bit as their high grade underground is exhausted. But importantly, this is only a snapshot at this point in time. They got a lot of drilling coming, and even from listening to the conference call, even from the existing resources, they expect to be able to add at least another 12 to 18 months, and that's without there's another ultra high grade hit with visible gold appearing a few weeks ago that they're just waiting on assays, and that could really excite the market again. It's probably going to be one of those 100 gram per ton hits. So that's another still got those drill results to excite the market. And this stock, you can go back and look at some of the videos. I've been talking about it for a while. I still think it's a massive takeover target. There's no projects of this quality on the ASX at the moment, and very few on the TSX as well. And you can see here that one of the main reasons I've talked about as a takeover target is just B2 Gold, large to mid to large cap producer now. I think with 900,000 ounces a year. Its Toega deposit, less than 15 kilometers away from Sembrado, 1 million ounces inferred resources, and combined with the 1.6 million ounces of reserves for Sembrado, that combining those two projects really gives a scale of a project that someone like B2 Gold would be interested. And then they've got that Bombore deposit, which is owned by Orezone. Not as good a grade, but very shallow resources, I think, and quite good processing, low processing costs. So potentially some sort of synergy there as well. But in particular, Toega and Sembrado, I think combining this project is logical, and it's Sembrado's of a quality that someone bigger should own, and that's why I think it eventually will get taken out. But if they go to construction, I think they've done all they can to de-risk the project, and I'm confident they can get there. So obviously the share price been that downtrend. Came out on Thursday. They said they were releasing the feasibility study on Friday. Share price started to push up a little bit. All those sellers suddenly disappeared, and then on Friday had another good volume day and pushed it up to close at a couple of week high at 35 cents. So that's quite a good turnaround, and I'm hoping that trend continues, but maybe those sellers are still sitting there. I don't know what the cause of this downtrend is. There was nothing to suggest that this was the feasibility study was going to come in with poor numbers that have been pretty well flagged for a few months now. So it delivered and met analysts' expectations. So I think the project's de-risked now, and I'd expect to see a bit more buying coming in from institutional investors, perhaps, who may not have been able to buy it without seeing that feasibility study. So that's one I'm big into, and I think is a takeover target. In my super fund, I've been buying some more DCN gold, which I've talked about a few times here. That's dropped away the last couple of weeks for no apparent reason. One of the themes but not in WAF, but in a lot of these other stocks that I'll talk about, is just really low volumes, falling away to less than 200,000 shares a day there for the last sort of 6 weeks. And I think historically this is sort of respected support and resistance levels quite well. There's this zone around 260 here. It's matched the low that it made on the in February around 255 there, and I think this is a logical buying opportunity. So I bought some more in my super fund. I think that project's run by good people, and I think will surprise to the upside. And I think that if it does, I think they can demand a premium sort of valuation. Also, a takeover target being near a couple of the others. I'll talk about some of those bigger miners in a minute. The other one I've been buying up in is Echo Resources. Feasibility study due in the next, I think they said in the second quarter, so potentially by the end of this week. Maybe they're a bit late, but I'd expect it in the next 3 weeks anyway. I don't see that. I see that feasibility study as very, very positive. They've got more than 1 million ounces in the ground now. I think combining Aurelia and Julius deposits, you can see here they've got 969,000 ounces in measured and indicated. So they're going to have a reserve, probably 700 to 800,000 ounces, and that's going to give a 7 or 8 year mine life. The key here is they already own the bronzing processing plant, and I think that might cost 25 million or so to refurbish, but that's well within their capacity to get some debt and raise some more equity and fund that project. And it's going to have an incredibly short payback period. Not many people have the ability to have a mine when I only spent 25 million for 100,000 ounces of production. So I expect that feasibility study to show some really good numbers. Northern Star with 20%. Talked about this one probably 3 months ago, so you can go look at that video, but it's down almost 50% from the highs. Completely illogical for mine. You can see here again, low volume. I don't know if it's tax loss selling or whatever. If it's Northern Star playing games, this is a logical buying level for me. Testing that low it made in May. There hasn't been any signs of that the feasibility study is not going to deliver. So it's in that similar category to WAF, and I think it's another takeover target, particularly with Northern Star having that stake in it already. CDV is another one. Nothing's really happened with CDV, but again, leaking away, down to a 2-year low almost now. You can see here, volume's really leaked away here to 130,000 shares a day average over the last 40 days. It's trading about 50 grand a day at this point. It's nothing. One of the things about this stock is it's got huge institutional ownership, Goldfields with a 15 to 20% stake as well. So there's not a lot of free float, and in periods, particularly around sort of tax loss selling and weak periods in the gold development sector, it's going to leak away. But I expect this project to start delivering soon as well. Some news flow probably is due. They've been a bit cagey. I don't know what all that means, but I think the project stacks up, and I'm still sticking with it. I did sell some about 50 cents just because I thought it might leak away a bit more, but I'd happily buy those back soon when I've got some free capital available. But I think it's still a very good project, and I still hold quite a few shares for my portfolio. So those 4 companies are probably my picks at the moment. Companies like Gascoigne as well has done not much the last few weeks. There's still probably a little bit of uncertainty there that its project is going to hit targets, and that they've hit first gold now, produced first gold. So still a little bit wary there, but I haven't seen anything to suggest that they're going to miss their forecasts, and they've delivered the project on time, on budget. Seems to be run by quite good people, but it probably doesn't have the upside of something like Echo for me at the moment. So I'm more inclined to just take a bit of a wait and see approach. Still hold shares, but it's in a little bit of an uptrend there. You can see here there's a trend forming where it's hopefully this 50 cent level is the a bit of a base for it. Volume hasn't been massive on the downside. These up days are much higher than the down moves, so that's generally positive. But I guess broadly, I want to mention some of those other names that I think are the logical acquirers of some of these companies, particularly DCN. St. Barbara, for example, was publicly stated they're after a 200,000 ounce plus project with that 10 years of mine life sort of thing, and St Barbara is less than 20 kilometres away from, or less than 50 kilometres, I think, from Mount Morgan's Dacian's project. So they want a project like Dacian has. They're nearby. They've got $400 million in the bank, all-time high stock price. This is, one of these companies is going to blink soon and buy out another tier player. I think a lot of the gains that are available in their share prices are probably like the upside without higher gold prices is probably not that much. So these companies need to start looking elsewhere to get more growth. And St Barbara I view as the one that's most desperate, since they've have only Gwalia and Simberi, which is a pretty fairly average asset, and they've previously tried to divest that, so they don't view that as a long-term asset, and they don't want to be a single mine producer. One problem with their underground at Gwalia, and that could knock them out for a long time if they have a mill problem or something like that. So they don't want to be exposed to that kind of risk now that they're 2.5 billion sort of market cap. So I think someone like Dacian is trading at a massive discount to some of these other producers, and would be a great acquisition target now that their share price has dropped away a little bit. Gold Road is another one that I've bought into in the last couple of weeks. I think there was a little bit of a short-term downside here due to some mechanics around the GDXJ rebalance, because Gold Road was not permitted to get into that index. I think it will be eventually, but I think they're in a good position now. They've got a good cash in the bank. Got half of the Gruyere project, which is the highest quality gold project being built in Australia in the last, say, 5 to 10 years, from what I can tell. And so I think this company eventually does quite well. They've still got good exploration ground and a proven exploration pedigree. So I think that's kind of a low risk type of stock with good gold price upside, and still with that sort of kicker of potential takeover action if someone else wants to take out Gruyere. It's probably hardwood now with Gold Road, with Goldfields having that 50% stake, but I think Gold Road's a good sort of lower risk development play over the next 12 to 18 months. But even so, companies like Evolution, they're not probably a logical acquirer of some of these stocks, because they've got still got some debt on their books, but they're always a cunning sort of. They've been ahead of the game in acquisitions and takeovers over the last sort of 2 years. Saracen also now producing good free cash flow. There it is. It's trading at all-time highs as well. So I think is probably a logical acquirer of someone like Dacian as well. Maybe not Echo, might be a little bit small, but Dacian's a company that could really move the dial for someone like Saracen or St Barbara. Northern Stars, the share price is not at all-time highs. It does appear to be sort of forming a little bit of probably the weakest of those 5 or 6 large gold mining stocks, ex Newcrest on the ASX, forming a little bit of a downtrending formation there. So I think they need another project as well. They've reached their 600,000 ounce annualized production target the other day. So they're looking for, I think some of those growth projects organic projects they've been working on for the last, say, 12 to 18 months have reached their fruition now. So they need to look elsewhere for growth. And I think a logical area is someone like, is Echo, since they already own 20% of that stock, and they've got the some exploration synergies, and they could really do with the milling capacity that Echo has in the area. So I think it's a good logical acquisition, and really could be a win-win. Some of the other things I noticed on Friday, there was a company called Dalradian, which had a takeover offer in Canada. It's a very similar project to something like what West Africa has, and there has been some takeover action in iron ore with Atlas Iron as well. So I think there's a little bit of takeover action, and South 32 bought an asset last week, a zinc mine, I think, in the United States. So there's a little bit of takeover action happening, and that sort of broadly, I think there's been companies have been cautious not to do takeovers in the last couple of years, even though they may have been able to and had the cash to be able to. But now I think with the sort of the market starting to enjoy a little bit of a revival in mining and takeover is becoming more palatable for shareholders now, I think that might be the opportunity that the gold miners need to start taking out some of these smaller players. So I think, a company like Northern Star is one of the potential acquirers. They've got about 450 million in the bank, just like St. Barbara and Saracen as well, having good cash and all-time high share prices to, if they want to issue shares in place of cash, it gives them, they've got all the opportunity to do that. So that's broadly where I think particularly the Australian gold mining sector is at the moment, and why I still hold those development plays. I think as long as the projects stack up, I think these bigger companies will acquire them. You have to be patient though. The stock may not move in advance, and one day you might wake up and it's got a 40% premium takeover, and that's what I'm waiting for. And I think it's imminent in some of these smaller Australian gold mining stocks.